This is the Golden Threads, Leland Artra's epic fusion of fantasy and sci-fi series, created by text-to-audio technology.
Chapter 9. Experienced and Dangerous. Ticca. With a wide smile, Ticca locked the door, dropped the key into her new pouch, and then went down the 3 stories to the common room, which was already busy. Jean was talking with 2 merchants, and 3 girls were moving around the room, cleaning tables as well as serving new breakfasts with hot arrot or geoleaf tea. Looking around the room, she saw that there were as yet no daggers present. In fact, there were only a handful of local workmen present. Most who breakfasted there had already been and left for the docks due to the early tide that day. The few merchants present were all locals. The tradesmen had already headed to set up their goods in the trade square. Ticca turned and walked the short distance to the specific table she'd dreamed of sitting at for cycles. It was one of the many used by known daggers. It was also one of the 8 that could be permanently designated to a dagger or dagger fire team. It was not a large table, just big enough for maybe 2 daggers and a client or 2 to share. It had the advantage of being near the bar and the stairs, yet still commanded an excellent view of the left main room. It was close enough to hear the left room's performing bard, which was important to keep up on the best tales, news, and gossip, and to enjoy the entertainment. It was also far enough from the bard's platform to allow conversing with clients. Most importantly, the table backed to a shallow nook, so she could sit with her back to a wall, and no one could come up from behind. It pays, being an early riser. I beat Harry and Frumpy again, but today, I'm going to move up a notch. Licking her dry lips, she took some deep breaths to try and slow her heart, which started racing as she approached the table. Glancing around out of the corner of her eyes, she sat down. Even though no one looked as she sat, she was sure a few took note. Jean didn't even stop his conversation, and she'd half expected him to protest. Jean hasn't kicked me away, so he is willing to let me sit here. She let her pack fall into the shallow contour of the wall, which meant it was out of sight from most of the room. She watched and shifted to get more comfortable. Her shirt was sticking to her back. I was more nervous than I expected. She pulled her shirt away from her skin. Leaning against the wall, she felt her smile grow at having taken a more prominent dagger table. A couple of notches higher on the dagger scale. Now, I need to earn it. It only took a few seconds before one of the serving girls came over and put her breakfast in front of her. "Which would you like this morning? Your hot arrot or the milk we got in? It's real fresh." Ticca smiled at her for the courtesy of not acknowledging the significance of her chosen location. "This morning, I'll take both." The girl paused to see if she was going to be asked for the price of the milk. When it was obvious Ticca was not going to ask, she nodded and moved off toward the kitchens. That got you a little curious." She let her smile turn to a smirk. As Ticca was taking her 3rd bite, the girl came back with her milk and hot arrot. Setting down the drinks, the girl left to take care of other customers. The expected familiar pair of young men came in the door and headed for her table. Seeing it occupied, they stopped, and then turned, taking a different table. Ticca watched as they said something to the serving girl that made her shrug as she gave them their breakfast. "Asking if I am an ignorant merchant's daughter, I bet. I know who you are, and I know who you tend to work for, but you haven't been paying much attention to anyone other than the big league daggers, have you?" After the girl brought back some hot arrot for the 2 daggers, they drank, and then the hairy one put a highly polished dagger into the dagger holder in the center of their table. It had a wide winged handguard and a simple circular pommel. Its hilt was wrapped with a black iron cord. Interesting. That is new. You 2 have only been doing simple patrol and guard stuff. Trying to move up to bigger jobs is risky, especially since neither of you look like the heavy fighting types. A soft thud announced Jean's arrival at the table. She looked at him as he leaned back in the chair. He had taken the other dagger chair, which kept most of his back to the wall, with only the kitchen door a serious approaching threat. "Always got your back covered, don't you?" She smiled as winningly as she could, causing him to frown and cross his arms. His tone was tired, like a scolding father. "Ya knows the rule." Taking another bite of the breakfast, she kept smiling and chewed before answering, just to try and draw him in a little more. Been meaning to chat with you about them. I think some things need to change." Jean's face scrunched as if the mere thought of a change to the Blue Dolphin's rules caused him physical pain. Harry was nudging his companion and indicating her direction in anticipation of the show. Jean's voice changed to lower than normal, still calm and somehow scary as he answered, "The rules ain't changin', m'lass." Bait, loop, and trap all in one shot. Keeping her winning smile, she unlocked the pouch at her belt and reached in for the crowns. Instead of feeling the 4 coins she expected, there were a couple of small cloth bags and other items she couldn't identify by touch. She heard her trainer's voice in the back of her mind saying, "Never let them see you flinch." Looking back at Jean, she saw that he must have picked up on her reaction as he began to frown even deeper. Harry and Frumpy were smiling, seeing Jean's obvious growing annoyance. She tried not to sweat or look confused. One of the small bags was a coin purse and felt heavy with coins. "Oh, lady, what has happened to me? Please be enough." She brought the coin purse out and opened it. Trying to act casually, as if nothing was wrong, she looked down, and her heart skipped a beat or two. Shining back were more than 50 crosses, as well as some cheras, bells, pence, rings, and even 3 crowns. One worn crown was sitting on top, like it was the king of the bag, which it was. "Lady, thank you." Her trainer's voice continued on. "Always go for the greatest impact." Reaching into the purse and grabbing a crown and 20 crosses, she said, "I meant," with deliberate motions, putting the coins on the table, crosses first, punctuating her words, "changing our arrangement and my room." Jean's eyes took in the purse, and she was sure he could sense the precise value of its contents. He then leaned forward, and just as deliberately took the crown. He examined it, tasting first, and then checking the heft against his years of experience handling such coins. "Well, the night was good for you?" Looking down, she saw that all the coins had vanished. "There's a few dagger rooms open." "Yes, well, I want a small one, preferably not too close to the stairs or baths." "I've just a one." Patting his pouch, which his hands had not gone close to prior, he said, "Dis will give you 3 cycles if'n you don't want food, 2 if'n you wants all meals within highly, eat, and your milk." Doing some unexpected counting in her head, she considered it. She knew it would likely be reasonable for the dolphin, because Jean never inflated or cheated. Knowing it wasn't a bad deal made her pause. "That is higher than I expected. I know the Dolphin is one of the best inns in the city, and also one of the most costly to stay at. At 13 crosses a cycle for the room, and another 7 for food. I know I'll be eating full hot meals as I please. But if I get some good work soon, I'll be able to maintain that rate. If I up my fee from a chera a day to a cross a day, or 6 crosses for a week, I would be just under the rate of some of the best in this room. I certainly have enough here to give me plenty of time to prove I can." Looking at Jean, she saw he had a slight smile in his eyes. "He's scheming, and I'm obviously on course. I need to be sure the stable fees are in this too. 21 crosses a cycle with stable, meals, highly, arit, and milk for me and clients. But as I don't drink much, I also want baths and—" Sending up a small prayer to the lady, she continued, "This table." Jean's brows moved up and down as he thought it through. His eyes told her he wasn't as surprised as she expected. "You've been watching me closer than I thought. You knew I was going to ask for this table." Ticca had to remind herself to breathe as he thought it over. Jean was reputed to be one of the hardest men to cheat or negotiate with. Standing up, he held out his left arm. "Done." It took a moment for her to recover from the shock of the quick agreement. She had expected to be bartering down to the threads of the bedcloth. Standing, she grasped his left forearm with her left hand. Agreed. Across the room, the two other daggers had stopped mid-bite and stared. Jean's large hand closed on her left forearm, and he grabbed her left elbow with his right hand and held her there. Before he released her, he whispered, "You done good, lady. Try to stay alive. I likes ya." Releasing her, he started to turn to go. "Jean, one more thing." As he turned back to her, she pulled another 4 crosses and 2 crowns out. "Make it 4 full cycles." Smiling, he took the coins, nodded, and headed back to the bar. Ticca knew everyone in the room was watching for sure. With a sly grin, she did the maneuver she had dreamed of doing at the Blue Dolphin since she was a child, listening to the stories the bards told. Years of practice had made the choreographed sequence seem gracefully nonchalant. As she turned and sat, she put the coin purse back into the pouch and drew her dagger. It spun around her hand before dropping into the table's holder, where it stood boldly for all to see. It was a slightly longer than normal dagger, polished to a mirrored surface. It had brass quillons etched with 2 packs of hounds running away from the blade, a bone hilt, and a diamond-shaped pommel. She smirked at the 2 shocked daggers who sat with their mouths hanging open, staring. She admired how nice the dagger looked standing up from the center of the table. "That's right, boys. This girl is an experienced and dangerous hunting dagger." In the back of her mind, she heard her uncle's voice when he was questioned about a dagger story he was telling. It ain't bragging if you can do it. And let me tell you, daggers can. Trying not to pay much attention to the room, she finished her meal. A few merchants inspected her dagger from a respectable distance, making a note in a journal or notepad before they left. She acknowledged them with a nod or smile. Some veteran daggers came in for morning meals. She didn't catch a single one of them inspecting her like the new arrival she was, and a few even casually acknowledged her with a nod, wave, or morning greeting. Overall, it was quiet and anticlimactic. When she finished her meal, Eller appeared by the table as the serving girl carried off the empty platter. Placing a square paper-wrapped package and an odd-looking key close to her hand, he said, "Milady, for you. I need to figure out what in the lady's name is going on with this purse. Might as well inspect the room Jean thinks is right for me." Standing, she reached out for her dagger and, in a fluid swirl, pulled it from the holder, looped it over her hand, and let it drop into its sheath. Packing up her bag and slinging it over her shoulder, she grabbed the key and moved towards the stairs. As she left, Harry and Frumpy stood up and grabbed their daggers. Before she realized what they intended, Jean's voice rang out clear and loud in the otherwise quiet room. "Oi, you seen plant yourselves back down, lads. Dat table is Ticca's from now on." Harry and Frumpy almost fell over backwards, complying. No one laughed too loudly. "I didn't mean to embarrass them. Last thing I need is enemies right now." She noticed a number of daggers, merchants, and workmen looking her over. "Well, that should spread the word better than anything I could do. Bet I get something to do pretty soon."
Want more? Check out reamstories.com/goldenthreads. Thank you for listening. Before you go, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to hear your comments on these stories, good or bad. These audio readings are produced with text-to-audio technology to keep costs down. 2 options exist to support producing them with greater quality and frequency, leading to the ability to use voice actors. Option 1, and my personal favorite, go to rimstories.com/goldenthreads and follow or subscribe to get early access. Participate in the amazing community of listeners and fans, and thus support the writing, editing, and audio production. Or, Option 2, go to patreon.com/LARTRA and become an audio production patron. Subscriptions sustain the serial writing projects and all their associated costs. Again, thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this audio production.